Welcome back to my channel. This channel specializes in writing about epic tales and myths from around the world. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe to help me out. Today, we will dive into a story titled Epic Chinese Mythology, the Legend of Pangu, and the creation of heaven and earth. I invite you all to listen. Chapter 1: The Cosmic Egg of Chaos. Before the mountains had risen, and before the rivers had carved their way through stone, before the sun had lit the skies, or the moon had guided the night, the universe was a boundless sea of nothingness. There was no time, no season, no sky, no earth, only chaos, eternal and unshaped. It was neither darkness nor light, neither silence nor sound, but the formless womb of all things to come. In the endless void, the forces of yin and yang, shadow and light, cold and warmth, rest and motions whirled without harmony, colliding and partying, yet never finding order. This turmoil endured for 18,000 years, until the swirling essence of creation thickened into a great, mysterious, cosmic egg. Vast beyond measure, it floated alone in the sea of chaos, sealed and silent, heavy with potential. Within the egg, the primal essences continued their eternal struggle. The clear and light essence of yang drifted upward, while the heavy and turbid yin sank downward. These forces clashed and intertwined ceaselessly, and from their friction, a spark of awareness was kindled. This spark grew into a flame, and the flame became a soul. Thus, within the dark cradle of the egg, there awoke the spirit of Pangu. The first being, Pangu slept for ages uncounted, his body nourished by the swirling energies around him. He grew vast and mighty, his limbs stretching like the roots of a great tree, his breath deep as oceans. In dreams he heard the murmurs of yin and yang, whispering secrets of form and formlessness. In silence he absorbed their strength, until the egg that contained him trembled with the power of his being. Yet a time came when slumber no longer sufficed. The egg that had been his cradle became a prison, pressing upon him with crushing weight. Pangu stirred, his great hands pushing outward against the walls of his shell. The chaos pressed back, but the will of a creator stirred within him. He opened his eyes to blazing orbs of light. In the abyssin beheld nothing but darkness, pressing in on all sides. In that moment, Pangu understood. If he remained, all would suffocate in the embrace of chaos. To bring forth life, he must break the shell. He must divide the formless into form. He must carve existence out of emptiness. And so, summoning his strength, he seized the great axe of creation, born of the merging of yin and yang. Its edge gleamed with the clarity of heaven and the weight of earth. With a cry that echoed through eternity, Pangu swung the axe. The blow shattered the silence. The egg cracked, and from the fissures poured radiant light. Once more he struck, and the shell split apart. With a thunderous roar, the egg burst, sending fragments of chaos flying outward. The lighter, brighter essence surged upward, stretching without end. This became heaven. The heavier, darker essence sank downward, pressing inward. This became earth. But the sky and the earth were not yet firm, and they threatened to collapse back into one another. So Pangu placed himself between them, stretching his arms high to hold the heavens aloft, while his feet pressed deep to steady the earth. His body became the pillar, his will the axis of creation. Thus began the ordering of the cosmos. But the tale of that great labor belongs to another chapter. For now, remember that from chaos came the egg. From the egg came Pangu, and from Pangu's awakening came the first sundering of heaven and earth. And so it is told, before all things there was chaos. Within chaos, the egg, within the egg, the first being. And when the egg was broken, the world began. Chapter 2, The Awakening of Pangu. When the cosmic egg split, and the first crack of light poured into existence, the slumbering giant within stirred for the first time in his eternal dream. For ages upon ages, Pangu had lain dormant in the swirling tides of chaos, his spirit nourished by yin and yang, his vast body cradled in the formless womb of creation. But now, as the egg trembled and groaned beneath the pressure of his strength, he awoke. The awakening was not sudden but gradual, as though the universe itself hesitated to witness its first breath. His heart began to beat with the rhythm of thunder, each pulse sending tremors through the cosmic egg. His lungs filled with the raw air of primordial essence, a breath heavy with power, enough to move mountains, yet unborn. His eyes opened slowly to suns of brilliance that pierced the void. With his gaze alone, the darkness recoiled, for never before had there been sight, nor light, nor consciousness so mighty. Yet what Pangu saw troubled him. Above his head loomed a ceiling of suffocating murk, and beneath his feet lay a floor of crushing shadow. All around him the remnants of chaos swirled, confused and unstable, threatening to collapse once more into a formless abyss. The heavens and the earth were not yet divided firmly, and without order, all would dissolve back into nothingness. A great weariness pressed upon Pangu's chest. He realized his purpose: to separate the realms of heaven and earth, to stand as their pillar until they were strong enough to endure on their own. And though no voice commanded him, no law decreed it, the will of creation burned within him like an unquenchable flame. In his colossal hand, Pangu still gripped the axe of creation, forged from the very struggle of yin and yang. Its blade shimmered with light drawn from the heavens to be. Its weight sank deep with the gravity of the earth to come. With this weapon, he had split the cosmic egg, and with this weapon, he would carve order into existence itself. But before the act of separation could begin, Pangu rose to his full height. His body expanded, immense and unstoppable, his head pressing against the shell of sky while his feet sank into the mass of earth. He stretched his arms, and with each motion, the universe itself seemed to stretch with him. Where he moved, chaos retreated, unable to withstand the force of his being. He lifted the axe high, and with another thunderous strike, he cleaved the swirling mists of chaos apart. The lighter essence, pure and bright, surged upward and became heaven. The heavier essence, dense and dark, sank downward to form earth. But still they sought to reunite, for the memory of their union in the egg was strong. Pangu pressed his hands upward and downward, straining with all his might to hold them apart. Each day that passed, heaven climbed one jong higher, earth sank one jong deeper, and Pangu himself grew one jong taller to bridge the distance. His bones lengthened like mountains, his arms spread like vast horizons, and his breath filled the void between realms. For 18,000 years, he endured this trial, never faltering, never surrendering, his very being the axis upon which all creation turned. And as he labored, the universe began to take form. The light of heaven grew clearer, shining like crystal. The depths of earth grew firmer, heavy with rock and soil. The stars glittered in the veil above, sparks left behind by the swing of his axe. The rivers whispered in the darkness below, born from the sweat of his toil. Slowly, the world was shaping itself under his guardianship. Yet still, Pangu did not rest. For he knew that if he faltered, if he allowed the heavens to descend, even for a moment, all would collapse back into the chaos from which it was born. His task was endless, his burden eternal, or so it seemed. And so the story tells, Pangu, the first being, stood unyielding between heaven and earth, his strength the foundation, his will the law of the cosmos. He was both creator and guardian, prisoner and liberator, for he held the weight of all things upon his shoulders. The cosmos had awakened, for Pangu had awakened, and with his awakening, the world began to breathe. Chapter 3: The separation of heaven and earth. The moment of awakening had passed, and now the burden of eternity pressed upon the giant shoulders of Pangu. For though the cosmic egg had been split, and the first shapes of heaven and earth had emerged, they were weak, trembling like a newborn child, forever threatened by the pull of chaos that sought to swallow them once more. If heaven fell, it would crash into earth. If earth rose, it would collide with heaven. Without balance, without separation, there could be no life, no light, no order. And so Pangu took his stand. His feet pressed deep into the forming soil, anchoring the earth with his strength. His arms lifted the vault of heaven, pushing it ever higher. His body became the axis of creation, the living pillar that held apart the realms. Each breath he exhaled rippled through the void, shaping the winds, while each inhale pulled in the essence of yin and yang, feeding his might. But the task was not done in a day. Heaven was vast, earth was heavy, and chaos was persistent. For every moment that heaven rose, the weight of earth tried to follow, and for every moment earth sank deeper. The heavens sought to descend. Pangu strained against them both, and thus began the eternal cycle of growth. Each day, heaven climbed one jong higher. Each day, earth sank one jong deeper. And with them, Pangu grew as well, one jong taller, each dawn his body stretching to keep pace with the worlds he separated. His spine arched like the sacred mountain ranges, his arms spread like the infinite horizon, his breath became the rhythm of the seasons, and his heart thundered as the first drumbeat of time itself. The years passed, not in hundreds, nor in thousands, but in 18,000 long ages. Through storms of chaos and floods of darkness, Pangu endured. His black hair grew wild as forests, his beard stretched like flowing rivers, his muscles towered like stone cliffs. In his eyes burned the eternal fire of creation, and in his voice rumbled the first echoes of thunder. The gods that would one day walk the world had not yet been born, and so Pangu bore his task alone. But he was not without company. The primal forces of yin and yang circled him endlessly, sometimes as gentle breezes, sometimes as violent storms. He spoke to them in his solitude, commanding them to remain in their rightful places, binding them with his will. At times, the heavens above trembled, threatening to collapse, and Pangu's arms shook with the weight of the cosmos. At times, the earth below quaked, straining against his feet, and cracks spread like rivers of fire. But never once did Pangu falter. His strength was the strength of the universe itself, and his purpose was as unyielding as stone. And slowly, balance began to take root. The heavens cleared, lightning into a crystalline sky where stars were born like sparks from Pangu's axe. The earth hardened, forming mountains and valleys, rivers and plains. The veil of chaos receded, retreating into the farthest corners of existence. The separation was no longer fragile but firm. and the pillars of creation stood strong. Yet still, Pangu remained between them, for the world was young and uncertain. He had become more than a being. He was the very boundary between realms, the living wall that held back the collapse of all things. His body ached with the endless strain, but his spirit burned brighter than ever, for he knew his labor was not in vain. Legends tell that, as heaven rose and earth sank, Pangu's voice grew deeper, echoing across the void. From these echoes came the first rolls of thunder. His sweat fell upon the barren land, and where it touched, moisture seeped into the soil, preparing the world for life. His breath blew upon the firmament, scattering the mists, and thus were born the first winds. His gaze pierced the darkness, and the stars took their places in the vault of night, guiding the balance of day and shadow. Through his unending effort, heaven and earth grew apart, farther and farther, until the distance was immeasurable. The pillars of the cosmos had been set, and the order of the universe was secured. But Pangu's labor was not yet finished. For while he had given the world its foundation, the shaping of rivers, mountains, skies, and seas still awaited him. The cosmos was vast, but it lacked form. Creation had been divided, but it had not yet been adorned. Thus the separation of heaven and earth marked the beginning, not the end. And Pangu, who had stood unyielding for ages, prepared to shape the world further with the last of his might. Chapter 4. The Growth of the Cosmos. For 18,000 years, Pangu stood between heaven and earth, his arms stretched wide, his feet rooted deep, his breath flowing like the winds of eternity. But though the separation had been made, the world was not yet steady, and the cosmos had not yet blossomed into fullness. The heavens were still thin, the earth still fragile, and the balance of yin and yang still restless. And so the labor of creation did not end with division. It continued with growth. Each day, as heaven rose higher and earth sank lower, Pangu's own body swelled to match their distance. His head pushed the vault of heaven upward, his feet pressed the soil of earth downward, and his spine became the mighty pillar that bridged them both. He grew taller than mountains, broader than oceans, vaster than the horizon. The sun and moon had not yet been born, yet already his figure cast a shadow greater than any that would come after. The heavens above thickened, their misty veil clarifying into the crystalline dome of the sky. The stars, once faint sparks in the darkness, grew brighter, arranging themselves in constellations that would guide mortals for ages to come. The earth below solidified, transforming from shapeless mud into firm land. Valleys carved themselves between rising ridges, mountains shouldered their way upward, and the seas spread into their endless beds. Where Pangu's breath blew strongest, the four winds were born, scattering the clouds and stirring the oceans into motion. Where his voice rumbled, thunder rolled, and lightning split the heavens. His laughter shook the foundations of the world, and his sighs became the whispering breezes that calmed the storms. But this growth was not without struggle. The chaos that had once encased him did not vanish entirely. It lingered at the edges of the cosmos, seeking to invade and undo his work. At times, dark mists pressed downward from the heavens, trying to collapse the sky upon the earth. At times, the soil quaked and cracked, threatening to swallow itself back into disorder. Yet each time, Pangu stood firm, bracing the heavens with his shoulders, steadying the earth with his legs, scattering the mists with the swing of his axe of creation. The effort was endless, But Pangu did not despair. For every moment he endured, the world became stronger. The heavens became clearer and more distant, their blue vastness spreading like an eternal sea. The earth became heavier and steadier, its roots sinking deep into the abyss below. The balance of yin and yang steadied, their eternal dance woven into the cycles of dawn and dusk, summer and winter, life and death. Legends say that as the cosmos grew, so too did the seasons first take shape. From the warmth of Pangu's heart came the heat of summer. From the coolness of his breath came the chill of winter. His eyes opened and closed in rhythm, and thus were born day and night. His blood pulsed with fire and water, and thus were born the storms of spring and the harvests of autumn. The world, once silent and dark, began to hum with rhythm. The heavens resounded with the music of wind and thunder, while the earth echoed with the groans of mountains rising and rivers flowing. Time itself began to flow, marked by the endless stretching of sky and soil, the eternal growth that Pangu endured. Yet the giant was not untouched by the burden. His body ached, his limbs trembled, his breath grew heavy. For though he was vast, he was still alone in his labor, the sole guardian of the young universe. And as the ages rolled on, he knew his strength, though immeasurable, was not infinite. Still, he pressed on. For Pangu's purpose was not survival, but creation. His body had been born of chaos, his soul of yin and yang, and his destiny was to see the world completed even if it cost him his life. Thus, the cosmos expanded. The heavens reached heights beyond imagining, shimmering with clarity. The earth sank into depths unmeasured, solid with rock and soil. Pangu's body towered ever taller, a living bridge between realms, and his spirit burned with the fire of eternity. The growth of the cosmos was not merely the shaping of sky and land. It was the first breath of order, the first melody of balance, the first heartbeat of existence. And at the center of it all stood Pangu, the first being, the eternal giant, whose labor gave birth to the universe. But the tale does not end here, for when the growth of the cosmos reached its peak, Pangu's body, weary and burdened, would begin its final transformation. From his flesh and bone, from his breath and blood, from his spirit itself, the world would gain its true form. Yet that belongs to another chapter. For now, know this: the world grew because Pangu grew. The cosmos expanded because he endured, and the rhythm of creation began because he stood unyielding. Chapter 5: The Burden of the Titan. For 18,000 years, the world had grown beneath the might of Pangu. The heavens soared higher each day, shimmering with clarity, while the earth sank deeper, becoming firm and rich with stone and soil. The rivers had begun to flow, the winds to wander, the stars to glitter in their eternal watch. Yet none of these wonders came without a price. For though the universe blossomed, the weight of its growth pressed unceasingly upon the giant who bore it. Pangu had stood for ages, his arms stretched wide, his legs rooted like pillars, his body bridging the chasm of heaven and earth. But now, the burden of creation gnawed at him like a fire within his bones. His shoulders ached from lifting the vault of the sky. His feet throbbed from anchoring the deep foundations, and his breath, once strong enough to scatter chaos, grew ragged with the strain of endless labor. No being before him had ever known weariness, for he was the first to live, the first to awaken, the first to act. Yet now, as the cosmos spread in every direction, he felt within himself the creeping shadow of exhaustion. His arms trembled when storms pressed heavily upon the heavens. His legs shuddered when earthquakes roared through the foundations of the earth. And in the silence between, he could hear the slow cracking of his bones, as though the mountains themselves were groaning beneath their weight. Still, Pangu did not falter. For every tremor of weakness, he found new strength in his purpose. If I fall, he thought, all will return to chaos. The heavens will shatter, the earth will crumble, and the dream of creation will be undone. And so he clenched his teeth and bore the agony, his spirit unbroken, even as his body strained. The winds whispered around him, carrying with them fragments of chaos that lingered at the edges of the world. They taunted him with voices like shadows. Why struggle, Pangu? Rest, and let all return to stillness. What need have you to suffer for a world that knows you not? But Pangu silenced them with the thunder of his heart. I was born of chaos, he declared, yet I will not end in chaos. I am the bridge, the pillar, the guardian. The world must endure, even if I do not. As the ages rolled on, Pangu's body grew ever larger, yet also ever heavier. His beard trailed like rivers across the land. His hair hung like forests from his head. His eyes glowed like sunspot. His strength waned beneath the endless trial. He longed for rest, for release, for a moment when he might set down his burden. Yet the heavens were not yet firm enough, the earth not yet steady enough, the balance of yin and yang not yet eternal. He could not surrender. There were moments when he wept, though his tears were not weakness but devotion. They fell upon the earth like rain, nourishing the soil, softening the barren land. When he bled, his blood seeped into the cracks of the ground, becoming rivers that would one day give life to countless beings. Even his suffering became creation, for he was bound so deeply to the world that every sigh, every drop of sweat, every groan of pain gave birth to new wonders. Yet his spirit, though unbroken, began to feel the weight of solitude. Alone in the vastness, with no companion but the endless sky above and the silent earth below, Pangu bore not only the burden of the cosmos, but also the burden of loneliness. No other being shared his labor. No other hand held the heavens beside him. He was the first, and therefore he was alone. And in that loneliness, he began to dream. He dreamed of a world filled with life, where rivers sang, trees danced, and voices of countless beings filled the air. He dreamed of a time when he would no longer need to hold the heavens aloft, when his sacrifice would be complete and the world would flourish without him. These dreams gave him strength, and though his body weakened, his will blazed brighter than ever. The heavens rose higher still, their dome clearer and more vast. The earth sank firmer, its roots deep and unshakable. The balance of yin and yang settled into its eternal rhythm, day chasing night, warmth yielding to cold, life weaving with death. The cosmos neared completion, but Pangu's strength was nearly spent. His great body, once unyielding, now trembled under the strain. His voice, once thunder, grew hoarse. His eyes, once suns, dimmed with weariness. He knew the time was drawing near when his task would be finished, and his body could no longer endure. This was the burden of the Titan, to give all that he was, to bear agony and solitude, to stand as the pillar of existence until the world could stand without him. And though his end was close, Pangu did not despair, for he knew that even in death he would not be lost. His body, his breath, his spirit, these would become the very fabric of the world, gifts eternal to the cosmos he had forged. Thus, the burden of the Titan was heavy beyond measure, but it was borne with a heart that knew no fear. For Pangu's sacrifice was not a tragedy, but the foundation of all that would ever be. Chapter 6. The final breath of Pangu. The heavens had risen to their destined height. The earth had sunk to its eternal depth. The veil of chaos had receded to the farthest corners of the cosmos, banished by the unyielding will of Pangu. The pillars of existence stood firm. The balance of yin and yang now danced in harmony, weaving the eternal cycles of day and night, summer and winter, birth and death. Creation was completer, nearly so, and yet the giant who had forged the world with his strength stood weary beyond words. Pangu, the first being, the guardian and architect of heaven and earth, had borne the weight of existence for 18,000 years. His bones ached like the trembling mountains. His breath came like storms before the rain. His heart thundered slower, as though time itself moved with him. He looked upward to the heavens, clear and crystalline, filled with the sparks of stars. He looked downward to the earth, firm and fertile, waiting for the touch of life. And within his vast chest, he felt the truth stir. His task was done. But with this truth came a sorrow deeper than the abyss, for he knew what must follow. His strength was spent, his body failing. To endure any longer was impossible. Yet Pangu did not see death as defeat. He had always known this moment would come, for he was not only the shaper of the world, he was destined to become the world. The winds circled him in mourning, as if they too sensed his fate. The earth trembled gently, like a child unwilling to part from its father. The heavens above shone brighter, stars glistening like tears, and Pangu, though weary, smiled. He spoke, his voice rumbling across the cosmos like the final song of thunder. My work is done. The heavens stand above, the earth lies below, and the balance is eternal. Yet the world is bare, without rivers or mountains, without light or warmth, without the breath of life. To complete what I have begun, I give myself. My body shall not vanish, it shall endure as the world itself. My spirit shall not fade, it shall live in all things to come. He lifted the axe of creation one final time, not to strike, but to set it down upon the earth, where it sank into the soil and became the bones of mountains, yet unborn. Then Pangu stretched his arms wide, embracing the sky and the land one last time, and released a breath so vast it swept across the cosmos. That was the final breath of Pangu. The winds howled with its force, carrying away the last remnants of chaos. The heavens trembled but did not fall. The earth shook but did not break. And when the breath was spent, Pangu lowered his head, closed his eyes, and allowed himself to rest for the first and final time. His colossal body shuddered once, like the quake of worlds, and then grew still. Silence fell upon creation, heavy and eternal. But it was not the silence of endings. It was the silence before transformation. For even as Pangu's body lay still, it began to change. His spirit, vast and boundless, seeped into every corner of existence, preparing to give birth to the final wonders of the world. His death was not destruction, but fulfillment, the passage from guardian to creator, from being to universe. The final breath was the bridge between what had been and what was to come. With it, Pangu surrendered his life, but in doing so, he gave eternity to the cosmos. And so the story tells Pangu, the titan of creation, exhaled his last breath, not in despair, but in triumph. For though he fell, he did not fall into nothingness. He fell into the world, and the world rose from him. Chapter 7. The body of the Creator becomes the world. The silence that followed Pangu's final breath was not the silence of an ending, but the silence of a seed before it bursts into life. The giant who had held the heavens aloft and carved the earth from the void now lay still. Yet, within his body, a final miracle stirred, for Pangu had vowed that his death would not be loss. His body would become the very foundation of existence, his essence woven into every corner of creation. Thus began the transformation that shaped the living world. First came his breath. The last winds he had exhaled did not vanish into the void. They spread across the world as the four winds of the earth, flowing ceaselessly in every direction, bringing motion and change. His voice, once thunderous, dissolved into the eternal roll of thunder and storms, so that the world would always remember the sound of its first guardian. Then came his eyes. From his left eye burst forth the sun, blazing with fire and brilliance, casting day upon the world. From his right eye bloomed the moon, serene and luminous, bringing night and the rhythms of time. Together they marked the eternal dance of day and night, light and shadow, yang and yin, as Pangu had always balanced. His hair, long and dark as the abyss, cascaded across the earth, transforming into the forests and trees that would cover the land. Each strand became roots and leaves, branches and blossoms, carrying the essence of his vitality into every forest and grove. His beard, flowing like rivers of black silk, became the vast fields of stars that glimmered across the night sky. His blood, hot and unyielding, spilled forth and carved channels across the earth. These became the rivers and seas, the veins of the world, flowing endlessly to nurture life. Where his blood pooled, vast oceans were born, and where it trickled, rivers and streams wound through valleys and plains. His sweat, born of labor eternal, fell like drops of rain, forever watering the earth to ensure it would never thirst. His flesh softened into the fertile soil, rich with the power of growth, while his bones hardened into the towering mountains that crowned the land. The greatest peaks rose where his spine had been, their snow-tipped summits piercing the sky as eternal reminders of his strength. His marrow became precious metals and gems, buried deep in the womb of the earth, treasures hidden for future generations. His skin spread wide and broad, becoming the plains and fields where grasses would grow and animals would graze. His muscles stretched into rolling hills and fertile valleys, sculpting the face of the land. His tendons and veins became paths and roads, invisible threads guiding the future journeys of humankind. From his breath and voice came the winds and thunder. From his eyes, the sun and moon. From his blood, rivers and seas. From his bones, mountains. From his flesh, soil. From his hair, forests. From his skin, the plains. From his marrow, jewels. From his sweat, the rain. In every part, Pangu lived on. But the transformation did not end with the body alone. For within Pangu's spirit burned the divine spark that had sustained him for 18,000 years. This essence scattered into countless fragments, each carrying a piece of his will. Some fragments rose to the heavens and became the clouds and lightning, guardians of the sky. Others sank into the earth and became spirits of the land and water, guardians of the soil and rivers. Still others took root in the forests, becoming spirits of the trees and beasts, protectors of the wild. Thus, the world was not only given form, but given guardianship. Creation was alive, infused with Pangu's soul. And so the heavens shone with the brilliance of his eyes. The earth endured with the strength of his bones, and the winds carried the echo of his voice. The world was no longer void, and chaos it was complete, vast, and eternal. Yet, though Pangu had become all things, his memory was not lost, for in every storm, mortals would hear the echo of his thunderous song. In every sunrise, they would see the glow of his left eye. In every mountain, they would feel the strength of his frame. He was everywhere and in all things. Thus, the people who came after would say, "The world itself is Pangu. His body gave it form, his spirit gave it life, and his sacrifice gave it eternity." The silence of his death had been broken. The world now thrummed with rivers, winds, light, and shadow. And so it was that Pangu, though gone, would never truly die. He had become the everlasting cosmos, the eternal Father of all creation. Chapter 8: The Birth of the First Life. When the body of Pangu became the world, the heavens and earth stood complete. The sun burned in the sky, the moon glowed in the night, the mountains towered, and rivers wound their eternal paths. Yet still the world lay in silence, vast but empty. The winds blew without song, the forests swayed without voice, and the oceans surged without heartbeat. The spirit of Pangu, scattered across the cosmos, knew this silence was not the destiny of creation, for a world without life was a hollow vessel. And so, from his divine essence, the first breaths of life were born. From the warmth of his left eye, the sunbirds took flight, fiery golden creatures whose wings carried sparks of flame. They soared across the skies, guiding the path of the sun each day and bringing light to the earth below. From the serenity of his right eye emerged the silver toads and moon rabbits, ethereal beings who leaped among the stars, tending to the moon's glow and ensuring the balance of night. From the blood of Pangu's veins, flowing as rivers and seas, life stirred beneath the waters. Shimmering scales appeared as fish and serpents, their movements gliding with the currents of his strength. In the depths of the oceans, colossal beings were born: turtles, dragons, and leviathans, to guard the watery realms, each infused with fragments of his enduring spirit. From his breath, which had become the eternal winds, arose the birds of the air. Their feathers carried the colors of dawn and dusk, of storm and sky. Eagles claimed the mountaintops, sparrows filled the forests, and cranes rose with the morning sun, each wingbeat echoing with the freedom of Pangu's final breath. From the forests born of his hair came the first beasts of the land. Tigers with eyes like fire roamed the valleys, deer grazed upon his plains, and wolves howled under the moon, calling to the spirit of the Creator. From the soil of his flesh, insects crawled, and from the marrow of his bones, serpents slithered, their bodies filled with the secrets of the earth. Yet life was not only beast and bird. From the marrow and blood of Pangu's spirit were born the celestial beings, guardians of the newborn world. They were not as vast as Pangu, but they carried the divine flame within them. Some rose to the heavens as the dragon kings of the seas to rule the four oceans. Others became spirits of the mountains, cloaked in stone and mist, watching over the peaks. Still others dwelt in the forests as guardian spirits, shape-shifting beings who guided the growth of trees and beasts. The world now sang with sound, the roar of rivers, the cry of eagles, the whisper of leaves, the crash of waves. The silence was broken, replaced by the music of life. But still, something was missing. The animals roamed, the spirits guarded, yet there was no being who could look upon the world and marvel. No mind to wonder at its beauty, no heart to remember Pangu's sacrifice. And so, from the final spark of Pangu's spirit, the most fragile yet most wondrous life was formed, humankind. They were not mighty like dragons, nor eternal like mountain spirits. They did not soar like birds, nor thunder like tigers. Instead, they were small, vulnerable, and mortal. Yet within their hearts burned the greatest fragment of Pangu's essence, the flame of thought, memory, and will. Humans were born to walk the land, to gaze upon the heavens and earth, and to carry the memory of the one who had created it all. Though they were weak compared to beasts, they were gifted with wisdom, with hands to build and minds to dream. In them lived the echo of Pangu's voice, the light of his eyes, and the endurance of his heart. Thus the world was not only alive, but awake. The animals roamed the forests, the spirits guarded the seas and mountains, and the humans began their long journey upon the plains. Together they formed the tapestry of existence, each thread woven from the sacrifice of Pangu, and in the whispers of the wind, in the glow of the stars, in the roar of the rivers, all life could still hear him, for Pangu had not vanished. He lived in the beating wings of birds, in the flowing rivers, in the towering peaks, and above all, in the fragile but enduring hearts of humankind. Thus, the legend says, from Pangu came the world, and from Pangu came life. He was the first, but through him there would never be a last. Chapter 9. The Rise of the Primordial Deities. The world was no longer silent. The mountains towered, the rivers sang, the forests whispered, and humankind began its fragile steps across the plains. Life flourished, born of Pangu's body and spirit. Yet, in the stillness between heaven and earth, the remnants of his divine breath stirred again, shaping forms greater than beasts, wiser than mortals. From the union of heaven's radiance and earth's fertile essence arose the primordial deities, guardians and architects of the future. They were not as vast as Pangu, yet they carried fragments of his immeasurable power, where mortals could live and die. These beings endured with the timelessness of mountains, with the fluidity of rivers, and with the wisdom of stars. The goddess of creation, Nüwa. From the shimmering rainbow mist that rose where heaven touched the earth, there emerged Nüwa, the first goddess of life and order. Her form was radiant, her upper body that of a woman with eyes like dawn. Her lower body coiled like a serpent, shining with scales that reflected the colors of the sky. She carried the gentle warmth of Pangu's heart, and from her hands flowed the power to mold and shape. Nüwa looked upon the newborn humans, fragile and small, and her heart filled with compassion. She vowed to guide and protect them, to ensure that the fragile flame of wisdom Pangu had entrusted to them would not be extinguished. She became the mother of humanity, destined to repair, to nurture, and to weave balance between heaven, earth, and mortals. The emperor of the earth, Shannon, from the fertile soil of Pangu's flesh. Infused with divine essence, there rose Shannon, the flame emperor, a deity with the body of a man and the wisdom of the earth itself. His skin bore the hue of rich clay, and his veins glowed with the warmth of fire. Shannon became the guardian of harvests and medicines, destined to teach humankind the secrets of crops, herbs, and the healing power of the natural world. He was the spirit of agriculture, carrying Pangu's will to nourish life, and the first to bend nature, not in conquest, but in harmony. The celestial archer, Hu-Yi, from Pangu's right eye, which had become the moon, a fragment of divine light fell upon the earth. From it rose Hu-Yi, the archer of the skies, a hero born to guard balance between the blazing suns and the cooling moon. His bow was carved from the spine of a dragon, his arrows tipped with starlight. Though he was not yet tested, fate would call upon him to save the earth from celestial fire in the ages to come. The guardian of order, Fuxi, from the breath of Pangu, which had become the eternal winds, came Fuxi, twin and consort to Nüwa. His form was also half serpent, half human, his eyes wise and far-seeing. Where Nüwa embodied compassion, Fuxi embodied order. He taught humankind how to hunt and fish, how to craft nets and tools, and how to read the patterns of the heavens. From his mind came the 8 trigrams, symbols that revealed the balance of yin and yang, the movements of heaven and earth. He was the lawgiver, the teacher, the one who inscribed the wisdom of the cosmos into the lives of mortals, the dragon kings. From the roaring seas that had sprung from Pangu's blood, the 4 dragon kings emerged, each ruling one of the oceans, the east, south, west, and north. Their scales shimmered with the colors of storms, and their voices rumbled like waves. They swore to guard the waters, to bring rain to the earth, and to ensure the rivers flowed with balance. Yet they were proud and temperamental, their tempests both blessings and punishments upon humankind. As these deities rose, the heavens themselves stirred, stars aligned into constellations, embodying spirits of order, while the sun and moon burned brighter, guarded by celestial beings. The heavenly court, not yet a kingdom, but a gathering of powers, took form in the vast expanse above. These primordial deities were not born to rule in harmony alone. They would clash as the will of creation demanded struggle as much as balance. Yet their rise ensured that humankind would not walk the world unguided, nor would the cosmos drift into chaos again. The memory of Pangu, even as gods and guardians emerged, they looked to the mountains, the rivers, the forests, and the skies and remembered. For in all their power, they knew they were but fragments of the greater will that had given birth to them. Pangu had become the world, and through his sacrifice, they had been born. Thus they honored him with their vows. Nüwa vowed to shield mortals. Fuxi vowed to guide them with wisdom. Shenong vowed to feed and heal them. Hu-Yi vowed to protect balance in the skies. The dragon kings vowed to rule the seas with storm and rain. Together, their oaths wove the first covenant of God's promise that creation would not fall into ruin, that life would not be abandoned, and that the legacy of Pangu would endure. And so, the world moved from silence into song, from emptiness into fullness, from chaos into order. The primordial deities had risen, and with them began the first age of myth, the age when gods walked beside mortals, when the earth was young, and every river, mountain, and forest still bore the breath of the first being. Chapter 10. The trials of the young gods. The age of silence had passed. The world now pulsed with rivers and winds, forests and mountains, beasts and men. The primordial deities had risen, born of Pangu's lingering essence, to guide and guard this newborn realm. Yet though each swore oaths of guardianship, the world was young, and harmony was not yet secured. For just as night must follow day, and storm must follow calm, so too must trial follow birth. The gods were powerful, but they were young. Their wills clashed as rivers strike against stone, each carrying fragments of Pangu's vast strength, but tempered by their own desires. And thus began the trials of the young gods, the first struggles that shaped the law and destiny of heaven and earth. The Dragon King's pride, the 4 Dragon Kings, rulers of the oceans, were the first to stir unrest. They commanded the waters with tempests, sending floods where their pride was slighted, and withholding rain when their honor was questioned. Mortals, fragile and small, suffered most. Fields drowned or withered, and the newborn villages cried out for mercy. Shennong, the Flame Emperor, could bear it no longer. He rose from the earth, his hands filled with fire, and called out across the waves, "Brothers of the seas, you were born to guard the waters, not to drown them. The people are weak, yet they are the children of Pangu. Do you dishonor his gift by turning the rivers into weapons?" But the Dragon Kings roared back, their voices like storms. "We are the children of Pangu as well. Are we lesser than mortals, that they may till the land while we are bound in chains of duty? If they forget to honor us, we shall remind them with the might of the ocean." Their pride clashed with Shennong's compassion, and the seas rose in defiance. The trial of the waters had begun. The bow of Hu Yi. When the Dragon Kings flooded the lowlands, the skies themselves seemed to rebel. From Pangu's left, I had sprung 10 sons, blazing brothers, who together crossed the heavens. At first, they traveled in turn, one by one, giving warmth to the earth. But in the days of trial, they grew restless and rose together, 10 suns burning at once. The heat scorched the earth. Forests withered, rivers dried, and mortals cried out as flames devoured the land. The balance of day and night, of heat and cool, was broken. The gods turned to Hu Yi, the celestial archer, whose bow was strewn with the light of stars. Nüwa, with sorrow in her voice, said, "Hu Yi, the people perish. The sons forget their duty. You were born from the eye of Pangu to guard balance. Now you must act." Hu Yi climbed the tallest peak, where the air itself burned with heat, and faced the blazing suns. He raised his bow and let fly 9 arrows, each a streak of fire across the sky. 9 suns fell, their flames extinguished, leaving only one to guard the heavens. The earth cooled, and balance returned. But the sun's mother, the solar goddess Xie, wept bitterly. She cursed Hu Yi for his ruthlessness, even as mortals hailed him as a savior. Thus was the second trial, the trial of fire, in which mercy and necessity clashed, the wisdom of Fuxi and Nüwa. While storms and flames raged, the people wandered, lost between famine and flood. The mortals, weak yet enduring, turned to the gods for guidance. Fuxi looked upon them with eyes that pierced the patterns of heaven. He drew in the dust the 8 trigrams, symbols of yin and yang, of thunder and water, of fire and wind. "These are the signs of balance," he told them. "Learn them, and you will see the flow of the world. You will plant with the spring and harvest in the autumn. You will build where floods do not reach. You will know when storms come and when calm will return." And Nüwa, his sister and consort, knelt beside the mortals. With her hands, she molded clay into figures, breathing life into them, teaching men and women the bonds of kinship and love. "You are not alone," she said. "You are bound to one another, as heaven is bound to earth. Care for each other, and you will endure even the wrath of gods. Together, Fuxi and Nüwa gave mortals wisdom and unity. Yet, in doing so, they angered some of the younger gods, who feared that humankind would rise to high, claiming power meant for divinity. Thus was the third trial, the trial of wisdom, for in the giving of knowledge lay the seeds of rebellion. The gathering at the heavenly court. At last, the gods gathered upon the summit of Kunlun, the sacred mountain where heaven touched earth. The air was thick with thunder, the peaks crowned with fire and cloud. Here, for the first time, the primordial deities stood face to face, their voices shaking the world. The dragon kings demanded offerings. Hu Yi stood, accused of slaughter. Fuxi and Nüwa pleaded for the mortals. Shen'an declared the earth must feed all. Voices clashed like storms, but amid the strife, a new order began to form. For though they quarreled, none could deny that balance was needed. Chaos had been banished once by Pangu, but it threatened to return if gods warred endlessly. Thus they forged the first accord of heaven, a covenant binding each to their role. The seas would be ruled by the dragon kings, but their floods must heed the call of heaven. The skies would bear one sun and one moon, guarded by Hu Yi and Zi. The earth would be tended by Shen'an, who would feed both gods and men. Wisdom and compassion would belong to Fuxi and Nüwa, who would guide mortals but not grant them dominion over heaven. It was not perfect harmony, but it was the beginning of cosmic law. Thus ended the trials of the young gods. Their pride, their wrath, their compassion, and their wisdom had been tested. And, though strife remained, the first laws of heaven and earth were born, binding gods, spirits, and mortals alike. But whispers lingered, carried by the winds. For some gods chafed under the accord, and mortals, gifted with wisdom, began to dream of their own power. The age of harmony had been forged, but the age of struggle was far from over. Chapter 11. The War of the Elements. The first accord of heaven had bound the gods to their roles, but peace was fragile. Pride burned in the hearts of deities, and mortals, though small, began to stir with ambition. The balance Pangu had sacrificed to forge was once again threatened not by chaos, but by the will of the gods themselves. The rise of Gonggong. From the black waters of the northern seas arose Gonggong, a god born of Pangu's rage and shadow. His hair flowed like ink, his eyes glowed like crimson fire, and his body carried the might of the flood. He was a force of destruction, for he embodied the wrathful side of water, not the gentle streams that nourished fields, but the torrents that drowned kingdoms. Gonggong looked upon the first accord with scorn. Why should I bow to Fuxi's symbols, to Nüwa's compassion, to Shen'an's soil? The rivers and seas obey none but me. I will claim the throne of heaven, and all will kneel. He gathered armies of river serpents, sea beasts, and drowned spirits, and his power swelled with every storm. The dragon kings, bound by their oaths, refused to join him, but they feared his strength. The challenge of Zhuangshu against him rose Zhuangshu, grandson of the flame emperor Shen'an, a god of order and light. Zhuangshu embodied Pangu's clarity, his eyes reflecting the fire of the sun and the wisdom of the stars. He sought to uphold the accord, to preserve the fragile balance of heaven and earth. Gonggong, Gumzhongshu declared, his voice echoing across mountain and river. The heavens are not a throne to be seized. They are the bones of Pangu, sacred and eternal. If you strike them down, you undo the very world we live in. But Gonggong laughed, a sound like crashing waves. Then let the heavens fall, and let the strong carve the world anew. The clash of water and fire. The war began with storms. Gong unleashed the fury of rivers, drowning valleys and sweeping away villages. Seas surged inland, devouring plains and forests. Mortals fled in terror, their cries carried on the wind. Zhuangshu answered with fire and lightning. From the sun he drew flame, and from the storm he summoned thunder. His armies marched with banners of light, their weapons forged of star metal and flame. Where they clashed, water met fire, steam rising like veils of smoke that darkened the skies. Mountains cracked under their fury, rivers boiled, and forests turned to ash. Nüwa est despair. As the war raged, Nüwa watched with sorrow. She had vowed to protect humanity, yet mortals perished in thousands. Floods consumed villages, and fire scorched fields. She walked among the ruins, her tears falling upon clay figures she once molded, whispering, "Children of Pangu, forgive us, for the gods have forgotten." She pleaded with Gong to stop, but he was deaf to mercy. She begged Zhuangshu to relent, but he would not yield. The war was not merely for dominion, was for the very order of creation. The battle at Buzhou Mountain, the final clash came at Buzhou Mountain, one of the four pillars that held the heavens aloft. Gong, in his fury, sought to shatter it and bring down the sky itself. His black waters rose like walls, serpents coiling within the waves. Zhuangshu descended in a chariot of fire, his bow blazing with the light of the stars. They fought for 9 days and nights, neither yielding. Gong's floods swallowed valleys, Zhuangshu's flames split the sky. Mortals, spirits, even lesser gods, fled as the world itself trembled. At last, Zhuangshu struck Gong with a spear of lightning, driving him back. Defeated, Gong's wrath consumed him. With a howl that shook the heavens, he hurled his body against Buzhou Mountain. The mountain cracked, its peak shattered, the heavens tilted, and the earth split. The ruin of the world. When Buzhou fell, the sky sagged in the northwest, and the earth tore open in the southeast. The stars scattered from their constellations, rivers broke free from their courses, and fire and water raged uncontrolled. Floods drowned the lowlands. Wild flames devoured forests. The sun and moon veered off their paths, bringing endless days in some lands and eternal nights in others. Monsters rose from the chaos, feeding on the suffering of mortals. The world was broken, undone by the pride of gods. The vow of Nüwa. Amid this ruin, Nüwa stood alone upon the shattered earth. Around her, mortals cried out, their voices thin against the roar of floods and fire. The heavens leaned, ready to collapse. She raised her hands to the sky and cried, "If the children of Pangu cannot preserve his creation, then I, his daughter in spirit, shall. By my hands, the heavens shall stand again. By my will, the world shall endure." Her vow became the foundation of hope. For though Gong had broken the pillar of heaven, and Zhuangshu's flames had scarred the earth, Nüwa alone would bear the burden of mending the cosmos. Thus ended the war of the elements, but its scars ran deep. The world lay broken, mortals scattered, gods humbled. Yet from ruin arose the promise of restoration. For Nüwa, in her compassion, would take upon herself the greatest of all labors, the mending of heaven and earth. Chapter Shurar, Nüwa repairs. The sky, the war of the elements, had ended, but not in victory. Zhuangshu had triumphed over Gong. Yet the price was the ruin of the world. Heaven sagged where Bujo Mountain once upheld it. The earth split and bled rivers of fire and water. And mortals wandered broken lands where day and night no longer obeyed order. The gods were silent. The dragons hid within the depths of the sea. The stars trembled, scattered like frightened birds. Chaos, long imprisoned by Pangu's sacrifice, now seeped through the cracks, whispering of the end. It was then that Nüwa, mother of humanity, stood upon the shattered earth and vowed to mend what others had broken, gathering the 5 colored stones. She traveled across the ruined world in search of the materials with which to heal the sky. From the mountains, she found stones of 5 sacred colors, red like flame, blue like the sea, yellow like the earth, white like the stars, and black like the void. These were fragments of Pangu's primal essence, hidden in the marrow of creation. For 9 days and 9 nights, she melted the stones in her cauldron of divine fire. The flames roared so high they scorched the heavens, and the stones wept molten rivers of light. When they cooled, they became gems of harmony, each pulsing with the power to restore order, slaying the black tortoise. But stones alone could not mend the heavens. The cracks widened, and monsters emerged from them, beasts born of chaos, feeding on destruction. The greatest of these was the black tortoise, whose body was vast as a mountain, its shell etched with the marks of the abyss. Nüwa knew its strength was needed, for the heavens required pillars stronger than stone. With grief but unshaken resolve, she fought the beast for 3 days, wielding a sword forged from her own divine essence. At last she struck it down, and from its legs she carved for mighty pillars to hold the corners of the world. She placed them at the 4 quarters of the earth, east, west, north, and south, so that the heavens would stand once more, restoring the cosmos. With the 5 colored stones, Nüwa mended the torn sky, pressing each gem into the cracks. Their light spread like veins of fire across the firmament, sealing the wounds of heaven. The stars returned to their courses, and the sun and moon found their paths again. With the tortoise's legs, she raised the heavens high, steady and unyielding. The earth ceased its trembling, and rivers once more flowed to the sea. Fire retreated to the mountains, water to the valleys, and balance returned. Yet the world could not be made perfect again. In her labor, Nüwa wept, and her tears fell upon the earth as pearls. From those tears grew rivers and lakes, symbols of sorrow and compassion, the scar of the world. Though the heavens were mended, they leaned forever to the northwest, for Bujo Mountain could never be restored. The earth sloped to the southeast, and so rivers forever ran that way. These scars remained as reminders of the war, a testament to the folly of gods and the endurance of mortals. Mortals looked upon the repaired sky and wept with gratitude. They offered prayers to Nüwa, calling her the mother of creation, the savior of heaven and earth. The gods, humbled by her sacrifice, bowed to her. Even Juanshu, victor of the war, admitted that without Nüwa, all would have been lost. Nüwa's departure, when her work was complete, Nüwa stood upon the highest mountain and gazed at the sky she had mended. She whispered, "Pangu, father of all, I have done what I could. The world is whole, though scarred. Let your children learn from our mistakes, and may they cherish the balance you gave your life to create." Then she departed into the realm of the divine, her spirit woven into the stones of the sky. Some say she still walks among the stars, her voice in the wind that calms the storms, her tears in the rivers that nourish the earth. legacy of creation, thus ended the age of creation. From chaos came Pangu. From Pangu came heaven and earth. From his sacrifice came gods and mortals. From the pride of gods came ruin, and from the compassion of Nüwa came salvation. The heavens stood repaired, the earth reborn, and the story of creation complete. But the scars of the past lived on, a reminder that harmony is fragile, and that the world exists not only by the strength of gods, but by the mercy of those who care for it. And so the legend was passed down. Pangu opened the heavens and the earth, and Nüwa mended the broken sky. From their labor, all life owes its breath.